kick. Start. Forward kick start.
Like I was saying, let's start over again. My name is Eric. I'm an independent industrial designer. I've been being a consultant for about the last 5 years, and I was a graphic designer before that, and then a whole bunch of other jack of all trades kind of things. And that's like kind of a thing that I resonate with, is jack of all trades. So I'm here to talk about Skinth Solutions and Metrograde Goods, which are two of my companies. And I'm going to start off with a bit of a personal history, and you're going to wonder why Sigourney Weaver is here. And the first thing I ever built was when I was in grade 3. The first thing I can remember, at least, was an assignment for a grade 3 project. The objective was to design a device to pick up a battery. And in 1989, I watched Alien, and I was 8 years old, and my parents didn't know, and I watched it, and I was freaked out. But I was like, the movie itself was kind of cool, and what I really liked about it was this crazy exosuit that I thought. And it was just like this robot that you can walk into. And that gave me tons of inspiration. And I remember building this thing with my dad in the basement. It was made of this like gnarly plywood, and then we had like a spring-powered arm, and like it was a super complicated thing to pick up a battery from the floor to your hand. But that was the first thing I ever made. And then let's just quickly fast forward for that. So I went through all high school and all this stuff, went through our programs and stuff, and then quickly went to University of Manitoba right after, and got a degree in ceramics and photography. And this is kind of where I started becoming cognizant of what design was, and industrial design and product design was, because I was really obsessed with the 3D medium of clay, and then creating functional objects that had aesthetic appeal and also functional appeal. So these are some of the works that I had from 2001 to 2004. And then I went on, I moved to Calgary. I went on to actually pursue a master's degree in industrial design, which does not exist anymore. They had low enrollment, so they actually had to cancel the program, which is really sad. So you can only achieve a master's degree in the States or in Europe or overseas, but not in Canada anymore. It's only an undergraduate degree. I find this is really sad because critical thinking for industrial design and design thinking in general is it's a huge part of great design and thinking through your product and then going through from conception to market. Sorry, to talk about this. This is actually my thesis work, and it wasn't even product design. It was more like a mini architecture project. I don't know how I ended up doing this, but I was obsessed with the idea of filling an alleyway with an apartment block. So it was more like a macro industrial design project or a micro architecture project. So the architecture students didn't like that because I was kind of like getting in their way and getting into their space instead of staying in my own kind of small world. Again, we're going to fast forward. So when I graduated from my graduate degree, I worked in a total of 4 creative offices. Each one successfully either closed or had to let me go because they were bleeding money. At the time, the market wasn't really so great. I was still working, and it was like basically when you're working in graphics, you can just sort of like swap out one person for another. So they found cheaper people because I was expensive. So when I was consulting for them, I ended up having to 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line, I would start working for them and then create projects and then create these established brands for them, and then all of a sudden I get canned because I was expensive. They were bleeding up. So I said, screw it, I'm not going to do this anymore. I stopped. I stopped working for offices. I stopped working for other people, and it went back almost 10 years later. I went back to starting to make teapots again because that was something that I really enjoyed, and it brought me back to my roots of what industrial design was and design to me was functional objects that were handcrafted and had significant meaning to me because I made them by hand, but they look like they're machine aesthetics, and then they're also professionally made. So there was a significant difference from the work I did in 2001 and then 2010. So it's nice to keep track of all these things, looking at my old work and then looking at my new work right now. Like, I haven't made a teapot in like 5 years, but the point is, like, this is what brought me back to what I really liked about design. And then after making a ton of teapots for like that whole summer, I think it was like 4 months making teapots. I made like 60 or 70 teapots. I did like the craft circuit in Calgary. I like sold all of them and made a bunch of money. And that kind of gave me seed money to move on to other projects because I wasn't really interested in pursuing teapots anymore because it didn't really, I got what I needed out of it. So what happened is that a buddy of mine lent me a sewing machine, and his intent was to make curtains with stuff. And really, the fate of all.
I was going to make curtains.
Well, you were going to make curtains. That's my chance over there. Krista was going to make curtains, but Ian had bought this machine to also make curtains. And the fate of most men who buy sewing machines to make curtains is that it ends up collecting dust in a corner. So I borrowed this machine from him, and I promptly broke it like 3 weeks later. So I started making stuff because I didn't like being a multi-tool user and having a tool on me to fix stuff and to do other things. And the idea of having all of that stuff in one pouch, it really enthralled me, and it got me back to that mode of why I love design. And I started developing carry cases for them because the ones that came with them always blew out after a month of wearing them. Like everything was made in China, and all the stitching was terrible. Like a ton of elastic that had a lifespan of like a month or so. So that kind of where they went from not knowing how to sew to kind of just jumping in, finding a YouTube video, literally how to sew, and how to first it was how to thread a sewing machine because that was like this whole mess of thread. I had no idea where it was going. So. Looking at all those videos, doing a ton of research, and then going from there. So it brought me back to it, and I have a quote from Adam Savage, which you may know from Mythbusters. He's like a personal idol of mine. It basically says like, it doesn't matter what you make, it doesn't matter why. It's important that you're still making something, right? Because everything you make, it's a lesson that you're going to learn and then apply to something else. Because it's a transferable skill. You're going to learn a lesson here. You're going to learn something that you can't do. When you can do it, it's a really great thing because you can transfer that skill to something else. So this leads to the first real product that I made. So this is the Mark I Skinth OG, the original Gangster. This was the first multi-tool pouch I made, and I made sure to take as many photographs as I possibly could because I knew at this point, at some point, if this was going to take off, I need this photograph. I need this photograph to show that I made this at this time, at this date. And this photograph lets me realize that it's like, okay, this is going to be a really successful product because it's doing two things. It's doing the same function as the one that you get with the multi-tool, but it also is much thinner and it's going to hold more because the multi-tool pouch only held one thing or maybe two things at most. So I popped in a forum that I belonged to and then showed off this thing and said, hey, I have this thing, it's going to be X dollars. Anyone want one? And someone's like, yeah, I want one. So one person, and then 5 people, and then 15 people, and then 50 people, and then 100 people want the same thing. So this is actually the first week of orders that went out. So this is like kind of, it's nice. It's another photograph that I took to remind myself, it's like, this is where it came from. So let's fast forward a year. In April 2011, the Skinth expanded its product line from 1 to 6. So from the left to right is the Juice Box, the OG, the Plus, the XL, the Magnum, and the Trailblazer. So all these things, all 6 of these became the product line. And it became a product line for almost a year and a half. And then I quickly made the branding, because I was used to already having, kind of working in high-end marketing, to make sure that I have a corporate identity, even though it was just me doing stuff, making sure that there was a brand associated with it. There's a name, a memorizable name, and something that you can remember when you go back to. It's like, what was that thing again? Oh yeah, it was Skinth, right? So, and then it got to the point where we were living in a 500 square foot house. I was working in this 500 square foot house with 2 dogs and 2 people's worth of stuff. So that was a lot. That was a lot of stuff in one place, and it was not. It wasn't exactly the most ideal situation anymore. So we decided to move back to Winnipeg and open shop here because we were able to afford having a home here and then expanding our shop by at least 3 times. Sorry. And then I found Ascentworks. Ascentworks has been like a critical cornerstone on prototyping and a space and a resource for people that are similarly like me, who understand the importance of prototyping, the importance of great design in manufacturing. It's like a wealth of knowledge. And from there, I decided it's like, well, the product line had expanded to 10 products. I needed something else because everything right now had gone to the point where it was a little too complicated. Kind of got away from the idea of a really simple pouch that you can carry stuff in. So I went back and did an intensive 1 week kind of design, I don't know what you want to call it, like a prototyping phase for me. And tried to figure out how to reduce. And it always comes back to this one quote from Jonathan Ive of Apple, after watching the documentary Objectified by Gary Hustwig. And that's the clip, that's like the freeze frame from him. And he's basically talking about the MacBook Air. And the MacBook Air is actually made from only 3 parts. Like, it's just like chassis is only made from 3 parts. And he's talking about that one part doing so many things at so many, like, and them pushing themselves to create this one part that does so many things and empowering that product. So I kind of tried, like, took that, internalized it, and it's like, well, how can I make something that I make right now, but with one piece of material? So I took that 1 week in October of 2012, and then prototyped at Ascentworks using their laser cutters, using Adobe Illustrator to kind of draft up a pattern and see if I can come up with, essentially was the OG, but with one piece of like folded fabric and that kind of thing. And this is marked 1 to 4. Again, taking process photographs is really important because when you come down to it and you have to do these kind of things, it's really important to have all of your documented work. Also for intellectual property later, so you can have to back up your information. So this is the Mark V. It's the current production model. It's made from it holds 5 things, up to 5 things inside of it, and it's made from a single piece of laser cut corduroy. And it's folded in an origami way and that kind of stuff. And I wanted to make sure that not only, it's not just me that can manufacture it, I can hand it off to someone else with a set of instructions, and then they can manufacture it. So that's currently what's happening, is that they're making parts for it, and then we'll do final assembly in my shop. It continues on in early 2013, which was quite recent. We got invited by Sherry Huss, who's the VP of Maker Media, to go to Maker Faire in San Francisco. That was a huge step because not only is Maker Faire one of like the premier communities for people like us who make stuff, who are interested in the idea of products and making stuff by hand. It was just like a huge boost because we were able to be featured in the magazine and get exposure on a national level in the States and international level because Make Magazine is distributed throughout the world. But being invited by Sherry Huss, like in general, like just like personally, like an email my it's like, Sherry Huss, would you like to do this for us? It was really, really nice. In conjunction with that, they contracted us to make 300 of the black L shields and then 50 of the red ones for their staff because the red is the make color. So that took, with the small staff that we had, it took us like 2 weeks to generate that order. So with any other factory, it would have been like 2 days, but you know, we're trying to keep it local. Again, fast forward. So business as usual happens, and then just recently, like literally last month, relaunched the website. So when I first launched the skinsolutions.com website, it was cobbled together with WordPress and some other stuff, and my guy in Seattle was having a lot of trouble combining all the options that we can offer and all of the things and problematics. So we ended up just like scrapping the whole thing, shutting the website for a week right after the Christmas rush, and then rebuilding it from scratch. And so far it's been a little bit crazy, mostly because we're using new software and it's a little bit hectic to get the system in place. But it's working out quite well. So that was almost 3 years down the line, and I was getting tired of making stuff for other people because it wasn't satisfying anymore, and I wasn't getting the thrill of making something from scratch and then having it be awesome and then send it out to someone and pretend that it's awesome, right? It's like they know it's awesome, but I'm making the same thing over and over again. So I decided to start something called metric grade goods. And it's another way of outputting design work that I do. Stuff I make by hand, limited edition, super high quality, and selling them at a really high premium. So how did I do this all? How did I do it? So I'm going to go with the W5 and the H because it's the easiest way of framing this conversation. So first one is who. So you have to know your market. This guy's not a student. This is like, if you're familiar with the internet, because we're all children of the internet here, you'll understand who this guy is. It's really critical from an independent standpoint, if you're making products by hand or you're getting manufactured, trying to distribute them out, is that you use the online resources such as forums and communities and message boards and bulletin boards and stuff like that to kind of be part of those communities first, and then be a product salesperson second, because you're going to find people there who have similar interests to you, and they're going to have those thoughts that you don't have, because they're coming from a completely different standpoint. So once the general population understands where you're coming from, your respect as a manufacturer will be more of an earned title than just, sorry, what I wrote here. It's more of an earned title than just buying into it, right? So if you find, because there's a forum for everything. There is a forum for everything, and I will show you why. So this is Gardenweb. This is literally a guy who's asking, what's the best toaster oven, right? This is like the super mundane question. And why is this important is that people are willing to take the advice of a third-party review more than anything above anything else, right? If you're going to go to stay at a hotel in Vegas somewhere, you're going to go to hotels.com and you're going to look at the review. Could have like the coolest website ever, but if it got 2 stars and like out of the reviews, you're not going to go there, right? So it's important to connect with those people. So what? I forget what I was trying to say here. Right. So you're understanding what you're making, right? So from my standpoint, I'm making things out of Cordura. It's a fabric. It's a textile meant for military use. It's designed for heavy use. It's waterproof and all this stuff. So I've been looking at how I can fold it in different ways to make it less of a textile and more of a construction thing. So it's more like using cardstock and kind of folding up and see like, well, here are all the pockets that I can fold, make out of this product, or make out of this textile without actually sewing anything. So I'm like, if you're accordion fold it, you actually have like one piece of thing can have like 17 pockets, right? I'm not sure what this is here. So this may be off topic, but basically, once you're on those forums and those communities and stuff like that, you can assert that you're an expert, right? You can assert that you're an expert by using your social media, your blog, your other documentation, conversations with other people. You end up being this expert, and that confirmation that you're expert makes your product more credible in the end, right? You as a person represent your product. So my example here is Kim Walsh-Phillips of IO Creative Group and ROI Nation. She wrote a book. She wrote a book on marketing and successful marketing, and she sends it off to her prospective clients to assert that she's an expert in marketing, so that when her clients come to her, she's like, well, you've already read my book. You don't even have to read my book. Just like, well, this person's wrote a book, right? So they're an expert in what they're going to talk about, so they're not going to bullshit it. And go from there. When? This is more of a timing thing than actually when. So it's going back to when you're talking to these people online and you're getting information from them, you're crowdsourcing. It's careful not to like push your product right away, right? If you sell snowboards and you're going out to a snowboard forum, you're not gonna say like, hey, I got a new snowboard. It's like, first post, I got a new snowboard, buy it for me. No, you got it's like, I like this slope and I like this setup. What are they? It's like, oh, I have a solution for that. Maybe it's gonna be great, right? So when I was already part of these communities, like EDC forums, which is short for Everyday Carry Forum, which is guys that are obsessed with like really expensive $100 pens and ridiculous $500 knives. So when I present like a $60 pouch, they're like, whatever, let's buy like 10, let's go for it. So I was part of these communities, so I have a backing, and they respect me as a person before I was a manufacturer. But you can gain that organic growth by gifting your stuff to other people and then letting them talk for you, because that's really important, is that you're basically letting them sell your product for you, and then you're printing money overnight. And I already talked about social media, so it's really important to have social media, because we're all children of the internet, like I've said before. It's really important to provide more information that people can grab onto, behind the scenes, any prototyping stuff. Facebook groups are awesome because you can just like celebrate images, just posting up like, hey, I just got an awesome order of 5,000 things come in, click, done, right? Post an image, they can see it, it's gonna be like 400 people is gonna see it in 2 seconds. So using the social media, you can actually try and be everywhere, which is something that Pat Flynn of the podcast Smart Passive Income, he's really awesome at providing the same post in 7 different mediums, and then he can be everywhere, literally. Because not everyone's on Twitter, not everyone's on Facebook, but when you attack all of those mediums at the same time, it's going to look like you're everywhere. Where? So we've been talking a lot about the internet. So basically, I do almost exclusively all internet sales, all online sales, no brick and mortar stores, because it's really hard to sell these products there when they're all handmade and they're custom ordered. But we've had a few bulk orders that have gone over overseas to the UK. We're talking to Gerber, and there's a whole bunch of other places that are talking about low run stuff, and they recognize what we do in terms of small scale production on high quality goods. So you have to assert yourself, understanding where your position is as a manufacturer. You're not going to produce 5,000 units in overnight. You're going to produce 50 units a week, right? So putting together press packages, blogs, other blogs besides your blogs, like there's men's interest blogs, general interest blogs, gear blogs. They've been huge. They've been like a huge asset to how Skinth was developed and incubated, because without those free sites that you're basically advertising on without having to advertise, I've spent $0 on advertising. And I crashed the site one time when uncrate.com picked it up, and then they're like, I crashed the site 3 times in one day because I had like 60,000 visitors or something like that. So put together those press packages. Sometimes you may have to put like a product unit and then send it off. It's just going to cost you the cost of your product. So that's kind of where that goes to. Again, with the internet, if you're going to launch a product, make sure you have a good website. Pay for the website. Don't get your buddy, don't get your cousin who's fresh out of design school. Get a website done. Spend the $200, $300, $400. Get a website locked in, even if it's just like a title page and some information. It doesn't even have to be like buying stuff, right? Because as soon as you have that website, you're not going to have something from like 1999 where there's flying toasters everywhere. Make sure that it's nice and clean, and people are able to read the content. So these are some of the blogs that picked up on Skin. Some of them more recent, some of them are older. These are the last 3 years. So Uncrate, the Awesomer, the Gadgeteer. These are all free. Like I didn't have to do nothing. They found the product. They're like, this is cool. We need to blog this because it'll generate information on our site and it'll generate information on my site. So it's worth it to reach out to the people and say like, hey, I have this new product coming out. Could you advertise it or feature it somewhere? And by and large, because they're actually looking for information themselves, like they need content. Otherwise, they're out of a job. So when you submit stuff to them, it's like, well, you've done the job for them, and they're totally willing to help you out. All right, I think we're going to how. So I've been at this for 3 years, and it's developed very organically over the last 3 years. And I've had some really early adopters, and the stuff I was making was not exactly the best stuff ever, but people were willing to buy into it, and basically gave me like tiny bits of seed money, which ended up being like a nice large sum. But you have to remember those early adopters, because you want to reward them later. You want to give them replacements on stuff that break, or new models, and keep in touch with them, because that's really important, especially if they're big like loudmouths on forums and stuff like that. You want to have them so that they can talk you up, they can give you props on the forums. My example is that I have a friend who's a plumber down in Arkansas. He ordered one. He ordered one of the first XLs or something like that, and he's now the forum moderator for this EDC forums, which is has a membership of 200,000 or something like that. So it's actually quite nice that I'm still friends with him. So I gift stuff to him all the time just to keep him happy, because people have questions and he'll forward me the questions, and I don't have to do anything. So I just have to check the forum, and it's oh, I got a message from that guy. So keep them happy, keep your early adopters happy. And so this was overnight, and jump on any opportunities to get interviews. I recently got interviewed by the new Artemis, which is a blog about gear and other stuff, and it's kind of one of those general interest blogs that if you're into gear, that's where you want to go. And they talked about a lot of the questions that were asked were the similar one I'm talking about now, which is why I have all this stuff prepared. But you jump on any opportunity to get interviews and product reviews, because usually it's free. It's the internet. It's not like you're going to pay for airtime. It's up online indefinitely, and you basically get to write whatever you want, and you can write a really positive review, or generally you're going to send it off to someone who you think is going to write a positive review. We only had one negative review, and it's generally because he was trying to shove his $400 flashlight into the side pocket that was designed for this $400 flashlight, and he was really pissed off at it. But out of the 50 some odd reviews, the one review that's bad, I feel okay with that. And I already said this already, but branding and brand identity are super important. It goes hand in hand with having a really a simple website that has all your information on it. Get your brand out there, get your brand recognized, and make sure that it's recognizable in both style, your content, your language, all of that stuff. It's got to be congruent. So. And then coming in the end. So why? You have to believe in your product. It's people say this all the time. It's really kind of hokey, but you really have to do what you love, because if you hate what you make, or you're just in it for the money, no one is going to recognize your passion. It's just it's dry. It's just going to be you have a product out there that's $70 that costs $10 to make, and you're making $60 per thing, and it's that's your bottom line. But if you believe in your product and you have a really great description, and you have a really great marketing team that can write how you want to say things, people are going to recognize your passion and then buy into that. It's an emotional response to them. And so, finally, these are some of the slingshots I've made for the Metrograde website. So these are all handmade at AscentWorks, which is again one of those things where. That resource is there, and it's really great, and I'm really happy that Winnipeg has that resource here, and it's probably from what I understand, it's the best and biggest of its kind in North America, if not the world. So I'm really fortunate to have it here. But that place allows me to be an industrial designer, because it lets me be a technician. I'm operating the laser cutter, directly doing it. I'm not just paying someone to do it for me. It allows me to be a crazy person. It allows me to be a jack of all trades. So again, beginning of it, I said jack of all trades, master of none. It's something I resonate with, because there's actually a second part of it that most people don't know about. Most often, it's better than a master of one. So being an industrial designer, this is what I look to all the time for inspiration. So I think that's it. That's the end of it. Yeah. That was a lot, I'm sorry.
Anybody have any questions for Eric?
Yep. So I can ask you this anytime, but I'll ask it to you now. Being another person that's pretty much learned everything there is to know about what I make and I'm working on making through forums and things of that nature, when you're going to go out and, I participate, I'm probably the only other person in this room who's an EDC forum member. How many is when you're going from selling the product and getting out there, how many, when is too many? Because there's a lot of times there's a lot of options of where you can put it up to. How do you choose the right number to not get overwhelmed and not, I find that personally, if you're not active enough on them, it can maybe be counterproductive.
You have to choose your battles wisely. You kind of look for the largest communities that you can find, and also look for forums and communities that have vendor packages. Vendor packages are great. Like one of the slingshot forums that I on has a vendor package of $25 a month, which allows you to post pretty much anything for sale that you want, and no one's going to say anything about it because you pay for that right. Right, at $25 a month is a super easy write-off. Right, if that's your only overhead for making slingshots and selling stuff, that's great. That's like, you know. But I typically you'll like when you excuse me, when you look at these forums and communities, you'll understand really quickly how they operate and what the community's like, what the vibe is like. If it's like a really serious one, there's a couple like forums that are a lot like EDC, and it's kind of like a closed-knit thing. And they're all about like prosciutto and that kind of stuff. It's like that's not the right venue, right? They're all about philosophy and the idea of fixing things and like that kind of stuff. And that's not the right venue to sell things. If you're going to go to the forums that have the vendor packages and the sub forums of like people who like the products that you like, right? Then you're trying to sell. Like this one is like if I want to carry, they're gonna buy a $100 case to put their $400 Strider knife in it. That's like peanuts for them, right? Because they just spent $400 on a folding knife, right? So yeah, that's it.
Was that a picture of you with a beard?
Yeah. I had a beard like 2 days ago. I shaved for this. I got a haircut.
You look a little different now.
Oh, this one? Yeah. Look like a lumberjack. Rachel?
Thanks for sharing your story. I'm always like curious seeing you around December, so like how you came up with your designs and and how you sold. So it's really exciting about tonight. You said that it's good to be everywhere, and I've seen you kind of like, I know you have Facebook, but then you mentioned Pinterest, and then like there's so many things out there. Are you everywhere, like on all those things?
I try to. There's some smart technologies that you can use that you can be everywhere, but not really be everywhere. There's stuff like automated Twitter posts. Which I don't do. I don't like Twitter.
Are you on Twitter? I haven't seen you on Twitter.
I'm not a tweet.
Okay.
Twitter. I don't really like it. It's not the right platform for it. A lot of my customers are not that savvy, that type of savvy. You know?
So it comes down to, I guess, understanding your customer again. And
Absolutely.
where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of like. Apparently, I was told that there was like a small following on Instagram and those kind of things. There's some smart technologies where you can post to one thing and it actually distributes that same post to 6 different things. So that literally means that you can like hit your Facebook, your Twitter post could be your Facebook post, your Instagram post, your Pinterest, like all that stuff. It's like if you can find that automated software, awesome.
Are your notes going to be available, or some
Yes.
modified version of
Sure.
it? Yeah.
I'll post. I'll post it online or somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll send it around to discuss.
Okay.
Scott.
You're making a living full-time as a maker?
I am currently doing that. Yes.
And what percentage is from these products?
Metrograde is super new. Like it's literally 3 months new, and it's maybe like 5% of my income, and then 95% of income is from Skinth. So.
And is there plan to scale up?
Right now, I have in place that I could scale up pretty easily. We have 2 part-time operators operating off-site, like they're at their own shop. Basically, just drive over parts to them and say like, hey, here's the instructions, here are the parts, make me 400, and then they do it, and then a week later I get it. So they're quick. They're retired and they're ready to go and they're excited to have Coffee Mine. So yeah, the plan is to shift more of the grunt work, less of the sewing on my part, and get them to make more of the parts ready to go.
But could you talk to Robert Fabro and scale this up, do you think?
Sure, if I wanted to make 10,000 of one,
Yeah.
but I don't want to make 10,000 of one. I want to make 50 of one and maybe 100 of one, you know? Like the kind of, the idea behind Skinth, that it's not a general purpose one.
Okay.
Because there are a ton of companies out there that make general purpose ones, and they're really ill-fitting, they're too big, they're too small, they're too skinny, they're not ever the perfect size. So when I design these things, they're all about around a specific object or a specific tool, and I picked the most popular models and then design the things around them, so that knowing that Leatherman is going to be selling 10,000 units of Leatherman Wave, that's potential 10,000 customers that I have. So.
How did your product line for Metro Grade evolve? How did slingshots kind of come into your radar?
I knew that was going to ask. I knew it was going to come up. Basically, I knew that I had this model of online communication and developing a community of people around what I do. So, say like, I'm pretty sure if I launched something else, a different line altogether, with something completely different, but with the same aesthetics and same kind of tenacity, I could test this model. I could split test my audience and see if this works, right? So Metrograde is basically brand new, and I launched on the website. I bought a vendor package as soon as I had joined that forum, and it's like boom, right away, and see if that happened. Got a little bit of backlash here and there, just because it's like, hey, you're new to this, and why are you posting stuff right away? It's like, because I want to sell stuff, and I'm making stuff, and you should buy it. Like that, those are my reasons, right? Because I like making stuff, and then I have 10 more of them. Do you want to buy one? Oh, okay. That's the reason why. So I tried to transfer that model from Skinth over to Metrograde.
Are you set up where you have different manufacturers sending you their latest product coming out so that you can go and design the different sleeves and stuff that you're making, or are you going out and buying and researching it yourself?
A little of both.
Yeah.
I collect multi-tools because I like the concept of so many things in one package. So more times than not, I already have the thing, or I've already abreast of the new developments. But I'm friends with a couple of distributors for Leatherman and Gerber in China, so sometimes they send me stuff, and there's a couple guys down in Atlanta, Georgia, who make a really specific model for AR-15 rifles, and it's bigger than anything on the market, so they have to get something custom made all the time. So they had a sheath and it was crap. They knew it was crap and said, hey, can you make one? So, yeah, I can design one, but I can't sell it to you because I have to sell it to my own. And they're like, yes, no problem. We'll send people your way. So that's great. Yeah, so a little both, like I said.
So did they send you an AR-15 to lock up your product?
Just the receiver. No, they send me like, because I'm not really going to use the tool. They tend to send me samples that are B grade, which is fine because it's just for general massing, right? And just the size. It's awesome. It's made in China, but it's awesome. Everything's, yeah. Being the super nerd that I am, like you get to research all of these manufacturing types, and how they made that tool was super cool. Like they had wire EDM cutting the jaws, which is something that's not done anywhere else. Like it's cast and that kind of thing. So they were excited to share that knowledge with me because they knew what I did and what I've been capable of doing. So they're always sending me new stuff to see, like, hey, do you have any insight as to how to change this or anything like that?
Nice.
That's it.